sir, and
All
Arvind
good,
sir.
all good. Great to see you all.
Thank you, sir. Likewise.
So I just want to give you a heads up. One of my professor has joined as well, Professor Premchand Atikurala. He is emeritus professor at the ANU and very much interested in India. So welcome, sir.
Welcome, sir.
Can you hear me?
I'd request everyone to mute their mics for a second so that the voice does not echo. Yeah, so I guess we can officially start. Yeah, okay. Manav, please start streaming. All right. A very warm greetings to one and all present here. And as we all know, the world has changed drastically, and hopes have been high about India's economy emerging stronger than ever before. So we present to you our panelists who will be discussing their views on the role of Indian diaspora in the growth story of India. Over to you, Varsha.
All right, we have with us Mr. Manoj Pandey currently. He's an economic lecturer at Australian National University. He has worked as a fellow in the official statistics at the University of South Pacific and coordinator of the official statistical program at the School of Economics, Faculty of Business, USP, and then an adjunct fellow. He has served on various teaching and research positions at the Institution of Economic Growth and National Council for Applied Economic Research, New Delhi. His field of research centers are around the economic of aging, health, labor, development, food security, gender, and well-being. Over to you, Jikasa.
Thank you.
We also have with us Mr. Arvind Kaprit. He is currently an associate professor in mechanical engineering at the Oslo Metropolitan University. He has worked as a visiting research scientist at the Prognostic Center of Excellence at NASA, Ames Research Center, and he has about 10 years of industry experience, primarily in the energy sector. And his research interests are in the field of prognostics, health management, industrial AI, reliability engineering, and renewable energy systems. We welcome you both with utmost delight. I would now like to invite our fellow team members, Tanya and Sudeshna, to carry forward this session.
Good morning, Manoj sir. Good morning, Arvind sir.
Good afternoon, Manoj and Arvind sir.
Yeah, my bad. Good afternoon. Okay, so sir, it's actually a matter of great honor to host you both here, two amazing personalities. And I'm sure we will have a better understanding on the subject and get a better perspective after interacting with you two. So, yeah, Sudeshna, I guess you can start.
Yes, sir. So, Arvind and Manoj sir, how you both are feeling today? And we are really happy to have you in here.
Thank you.
Good. Very good. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So, sir, we'll be beginning with our first question, which we have for you. And that is that, so both of you have one thing in common, and that is working in the field of research. So, how's your journey been till now? Because it's a long one. So, first, let's start with you, Arvind, sir.
Okay, so first of all, thanks for hosting us. And it's really, I would say, a matter of honor to, be in such a panel discussion with Manoj sir and with you guys. So my background, as you know, I am not an economist, but economy is a part of you anyhow. For example, what I mean to say is that as a student, for example, when you get a pocket money, at that time also you have some kind of this economist in you that how at an optimum cost you can have the maximum kind of a fund. So in the research domain, what generally happens is, so my particular research, it deals with the same aspect. That is, how can you maintain your any energy system or any, you can say, an engineering system. For example, let's take an example of a car, right? How can you perform their inspections in such an optimum way so that you don't spend too much on that, but you can enjoy it, right, as well. You can have the maximum kind of mileage, all of that. So research for me, it has been really rewarding because besides getting all of these, for example, citations and papers, one thing which research imbibes in you is the mindset. And that research mindset is, you can utilize it in your daily life. And so research basically deals with, if there is a problem in front of you, you try to understand the problem first, you decompose it into the parts, and then you solve those parts one by one, and then you again combine it. So that can happen. For example, if I have to plan a trip back to India, I would again use this research mindset that, okay, get my all of the options, which are the flights which I can take, okay, evaluate them, okay, this is the best, this is the layover time, etc. If I'm going alone, then I can prefer more layover time, etc., etc., and then finally make a decision that, okay, for me, KLM is the best. So that is one thing which has helped me a lot as a researcher, that besides just doing research in my particular field, that is mechanical engineering, I have somehow been able to utilize it in my daily life. And the other thing what research brings you in is a network. So with the help of research, I have met a lot of people around the world, and which have you get to share the ideas with them and exchange ideas with them. So that is something which is very helpful. And in academia, they say that there is the rule that you scratch my back and I'll scratch your back. So it's like it's a teamwork kind of a thing. So you work with each other. So for me, that has been the whole story, I would say.
Yes, sir. Your research journey has been a long one, and that's really inspiring too. So, Manoj, sir, as we would also love to know your research journey in Australia, as well as how the Indian diaspora has helped India in crisis. And also, you can start continue sharing your experience.
Yeah, thank you very much for invitation. All of your organizing team and student community from FIC, and thanks for your. It's a great honor. I agree with Arvind that it's a great honor and feeling to be part of this event. And I think one of my professor here from ANU, he's emeritus professor here. I welcome Professor Chandra. Thanks for joining. And it's also a bit difficult, to say something in front of your professor. So I'm also a bit mindful of that, but hopefully he will forgive me for understanding.
Sure, you do it. Yeah.
Thanks, Professor. So coming back to my journey, it all started from a small village in Bihar, and then I moved to Varanasi. I did, +2 and undergraduate, and then master and MPhil from University of Delhi. And then I started working, in between with Institute of Economic Growth, where I spent almost 5 years doing economic research. And basically, I learned basics of economic research there. Before I got research opportunity at the Australian National University, there was a research project. Professor Atikurala knows, and the supervisor was Professor Raghvendra Jha, his colleague at that point of time. And I got opportunity to work in that project. I visited ANU in 2009, and I met Professor Atikurala here as well. And Professor Raghvendra Jha is again another Indian. So I got an opportunity through him, and then I got PhD opportunity with the help of many of my well-wishers, and Professor Jha become my supervisor as well. So this is how I got, and some of the topics that you mentioned about like aging, health, and so on and so forth. Because I come from a rural background, some of the things I have experienced, and certainly a lot of people of my age. By the way, I'm 40 now, so we have grown up looking into some of the health issues, infrastructure issues, and so on and so forth. So that actually helped me getting into the economics, and I understand the root. If theory says something and empiric says something else, we always try to learn what is the reality, and that is how economics work, and that is how you go into the policy. So I think that my background really helped me become a good economic researcher and the lecturer. And then after PhD from ANU, I moved to Fiji, where my role was broadly to develop official statistics capacity in the Pacific region, and so that use of statistics improved in NSO's national statistical offices in the Pacific region. So there are 14 countries in the Pacific region. And then after a year, I returned to ANU and joined this project. It's part of Australia Papua New Guinea partnership project funded by Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade here in Australia. And basically what I do is, we help build teaching and research capacity in one of the universities in Papua New Guinea. So my journey so far into teaching, research, and most importantly, institutional capacity building after PhD, especially, and human resource development in the Pacific region. So basically, it's a very fulfilling journey so far, and it's always good to give back to the society. So when we teach, when we do research, we always try to contribute into the society. So I will stop here. I think you had another question. Can you repeat the second question? I forgot. About the economic crisis.
Yes.
Right? So if I take the historical perspective, basically, Indian diaspora always helped India in crisis. For example, if you look into the freedom struggle of India, a number of leaders, including Mahatma Gandhi, Nehru, Bhimrao Ambedkar, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, and so they studied outside India, and they returned, to contribute into. They learned the value of freedom outside, and they came back and they contributed into. So, and that is how we got independence. Not only because of their contribution, but they provided leadership. Even after independence, many academics returned from overseas to build India's education system. People requested them to come back and build up, because India was very poor. Not much of the institutional strength. So a number of Indians living overseas, doing PhDs and so on, they returned and become professors and academics. Then the crisis, basically one of the crises, probably as an economics student you might be knowing, is in 1991. So basically when India was closed economy, the major source of foreign exchange reserve was the money that was coming, remittances that was coming from the Gulf countries and Middle East and so on. And because of the Gulf War around 1990s, that money stopped coming, and so India, just collapsed. So basically, Indian economy just collapsed because trade deficit increased, fiscal deficit increased. So they call it twin deficit, and balance of payment crisis happened. And so India opened its economy and issued a bond called India Development Bond, which generated actually around $1.6 billion that time. Later, when Prime Minister Vajpayee conducted this Pokhran nuclear test, US sanctioned India. Then he appealed to Indian diaspora, especially NRIs, to contribute into India's development. And Indian government had issued two bonds, in 1998 and 2000, and that created actually bring lot of money from outside India, and the impact of sanction was minimized. You have seen recently pandemic happened and how Indian diaspora helped India, providing fund to medical equipments and so on and so forth. So basically, for any country, not only for India, diaspora, their heart is always there, even though physically they are somewhere else. And it's very hard not to help your nears and dears when they are in the crisis. So this is what I'll go with the flow. I'll stop here.
Yes, so as you said, your heart is always there. You both are really great example of the Indian diaspora. Over to you, Tanya.
Yes, sir. So first of all, a very warm welcome to Professor Premachandra. So we are really looking forward to hear your perspective as well on this topic. Just a question I had is nowadays we have, we had a budget coming up, we had a budget right around the corner, and we are looking, the theme of this event is India in 2030. So what is a good economic vision that we should have for our country, and what are the key aspects or the sectors that we should focus on? And if we do focus on a particular sector, then how can we go about it? So Manoj sir, we can start with you.
All right. See, it is true that not two economists agree on many things all the time, but I think no economist in the world deny that India has huge potential to show consistent growth. Unfortunately, last decade, if you look into that, India's performance was disappointing. With an average of around 5.3% per annum growth, which is not India's potential. It's in double digit. A lot of people say that. Unemployment issue is definitely there, and it did not solve in the entire decade. So I think India has tested a lot of models. Around Nehru's time, then Indira Gandhi's time, and then liberalization, and then Vajpayee tried to invest into the infrastructure. So investment, infrastructure, all sort of things, models are tested, and I think India has always benefited from open economy. And if you look into the current trend, I think India is going back towards its pre-liberalization. It's becoming closure economy now. If you look into, it's at, I think around 2000. So same level of openness was in 2006 or something. So India has to actually accept that this is a global economy, and there will be losers and winners, but it is always, you can't run to a potential without opening your arms. So that's one thing, and investment is very much important. Competition, innovation is very important, but the most important thing that in some of the lectures from Professor Atikurala, also, for other countries, that education and health sector. Pandemic has shown how vulnerable education sector is. Millions of children are out of the school. Health sector infrastructure, you have seen, people dying without oxygen and so on and so forth. So how to improve actually those infrastructure, how to give employment to the people, it's not easy, but then, I think through proper promotion of innovations and, some of the sectors like informal sector, it's in a bad situation because of some of the external shocks and some of the policy shocks. Right. So I would say that labor reform is required. Agriculture sector should be there because it's quite bad performance, and India has a huge population to feed. Financial sector is one of the area where government has to look into, and I think they're looking into it as well. How lending rules can be transformed and NPAs can be reduced and so on and so forth. One area that I think India has tried to tap into but did not succeed is medical tourism. India has a huge potential of medical tourism with the cheap, medical facilities and so on and so forth. So these are some of the areas where Indian economic vision should focus on. And I think on some of the fronts, Indian government and policymakers are doing well. But on the other fronts, like poverty and inequality has increased in last decade or so, and there are indications of that. So which is actually, I think we need to sit down and think of what is working in terms of, growth, in terms of the inclusive growth. Overall, since 1947, India has grown so much, but I'm just talking about in terms of potential, how to get that potential. Another issue is that India has a huge, population, but the market share is quite small. So India has to improve on that. And if you don't provide proper education, training, skills, health, then your young population will be burdened in next 30 to 40 years because they will be aging, and then a whole lot of aging issues will be that other countries, some of the other countries are facing. India will start facing that. So I think economic vision should look into the short term, medium term, and the long term goals and work around that.
I completely agree with you, sir, and especially the medical tourism part, that we really need to focus on that aspect. So it's actually very necessary for a policymaker to realize how it can affect at a macro and a micro level. And I think that we should, need to realize the inclusive growth aspect as well, as you mentioned. So yes, sir, it's actually a really nice perspective. Arvind, sir, what if we ask your vision for a good economic growth? So what can be your vision for that?
Okay, so I fully agree with Manoj sir's perspective, but I will not take it from an economist point of view because I don't have that skill, but from the technology point of view and given what experience I have. And I would like to give certain examples. And the first thing and this is again my personal opinion, and that is, as you mentioned, policy making is, I think, because the governments decide how your countries are going to run. First of all, I'll give you an example of Norway versus Venezuela. So if you compare, both the countries had similar amount of oil and gas reserves, right? Venezuela even had more than Norway. And at the same time, around 1970s, you can say, they were discovered that, okay, Norway also had certain amount of reserves, Venezuela. But now after 40 years, you see the fate of both of the countries. It's totally on the 180 degrees. Norway is, you can say, in terms of happiness index, etc., etc., and in terms of economic growth, they are at the top. On the other hand, Venezuela is down. And where is the difference? So two things. One is how the policies were made, and second is the mutual trust between government and within the people. So governments didn't trust people, and the people don't trust government. A lot of corruption, etc., and that is why this thing happened. So I think policy making is something which is very important in terms of growth, which means that even if we have a lot of resources but the policies are not made, and if there is not a mutual amount of trust, forget about the growth, you will go in the opposite direction. So that is, I think, another thing. So resources can be depleted, right? You can have, like, the history says that India used to be the golden bird, and then the Britishers included, and the thing happened. So one advantage with that took was the mistrust among the people, I believe so. So that is one thing. And then the sectors in which I personally feel that India can grow is, besides the other sectors, is one is definitely the energy sector. And so I will give you one insight about the oil and gas field. So if you see, India is actually covered by covered by the ocean on the three sides. And when I started my career with Reliance, so then most of these big oil giant provider companies, they said that they have studied that in 1980s a huge seismic survey had happened, and they say that golden reservoirs of oil and gas are in the basins of India actually. But then the problem was that the technological development was not up to the mark. What do you mean by that? Which means that about 50 years ago, I'll take example of space, that no one thought of, or even if you thought of going to Mars, but the technology was not ready for it. So one thing which differentiates between a reality and a fiction is that there has to be some sort of a technology to bridge that gap. So in our case also, when we say that, okay, on the basins of, or on the Bay of Bengal, Indian Ocean, if there are a lot of oil and gas reserves, they are at which means if this is your sea level, so you have to go, first of all, 2000 meters below the sea level, and then on the seabed, 2000 meters down to that. So technology was not ready for it. But now big companies like Schlumberger, Halliburton, now they are ready for it. And it is envisaged that once the oil reserves and oil and gas, it is depleted, most of the focus will be on oil and gas around the basins of India, right? And Reliance is there, ONGC is there, now Adani Group is coming, etc., etc. But at that particular moment of time, how the policies are framed, that would be very important. Do you want one particular person to be rich, or do you want that the economy is equally divided amongst the people? So what the Norwegian government has done, they have, out of all of this money, so they have the biggest player over here is a public company like our ONGC. and all of the money that comes they pay to the government, and they have invested that money around the world in the big companies, and they call it as, you can say, a Norwegian sovereign bond. And how the country is currently running, they are just using a 4% of that bond, or you can say a big capital share of that, just to run the country. And it is evaluated that its value is $1 trillion. So theoretically, if you divide it by the per capita, every person residing in Norwegian is a millionaire, theoretically speaking. But the point is, they have that back. Even and that reasoning came because the policy was made in that way, because they knew that all of these oil and gas resources, they are non-renewable. Once you deplete them, once you burn them, it is gone. You cannot. So how to make this circular economy kind of a thing, that okay, you get the money, you invest it across other sectors, and then you get the money. And in India, now let's compare India and China from technological perspective, right? So you will see one thing, that if you compare Fortune 500 companies, you will see a lot of public sector Chinese companies in the first 10. For example, China Post is there, etc., etc. On the other hand, in India, you will see privatization has been more of a success. So you will see the public versus how the public companies in China are, at the top. And in India, the recent fate of Air India, now it has been transferred back to Tata, and everyone has that hope that given the brand name and given the products Tata has delivered, Air India will again reach its apex. So why is that differentiation? Why the public companies are growing in such a great rate in China and not in India? And I was talking to one of my colleagues, and he says that that can be one of the possibilities, that is possibly because of the autocratic rule in China, right? Which is not possible in India. So as per him, so he's not an expert again in technology, it was just a discussion around the coffee table. So he said on a longer run, India can benefit out of it, because once the autocratic rule in China finishes, because over there you are forced to work this is your duty, you have to do, you cannot speak again. So that is not a self-sustaining model. And another thing from the technology perspective which I see is IT industry in India is very strong. And I'll give you an example what has happened in Norway. So we know that in 1990s, a lot of Indians went to America and then probably to Australia. And now people are coming to Norway. So as of now, you'll see in India, there are only, in Norway, there are only 30,000 Indians. And out of that, in 2020, before COVID, 19,000 Indians came to Norway. And the route was IT. Infosys, now they have developed and they have taken the major, the big banks, the big oil and companies. So I think we have to focus on technology, because that is one thing where we are ahead. So we should again, educate our people. So it again boils down to the basic things that, education has to be in such a way, but what are you teaching, that is also very important. Don't, in terms of technology, history will never change. What has happened in 1947, it will remain the same. But technology is something which changes every now and then. So we as an educator, it is our role that we see that okay, technology is moving in this direction, this is what we should teach in the classes. And again, the policy, what is in your books. So there has to be, you can say, the three pillars. Definitely the ground is for the policy, and then comes the trust between the society, and then the role of educators is that okay, where is technology heading, we disseminate the same knowledge to the students, and the role of student is have fun but learn as well. Yeah, so that is I think my perspective.
That's really great to hear, sir. Actually, we all are residing here and we know about what are the, aspects in India, but getting a perspective from someone living in Norway, someone who has an experience about their economy, it's actually great for me to hear, because I learned a lot, especially the stark difference that you told us about Venezuela and Norway and how you compared India's public and private sectors with that of China's. So that is something we really needed. I needed to hear, and I'm sure I speak this for everyone, that the audience also needed to hear. So that's actually a very good perspective. So, over to you, Suresh, now.
Yes. So, Arvind, sir, you moved out of India long years back. So, for the first time, when you reached Norway for months.
Sorry, Sudeshna, I didn't. There was some lag, so can you please repeat?
Yes.
I just heard that. Yeah, I moved to Norway long back, and then.
Yes. So you moved out of India long years back. you moved out of. So when you reached Norway, was there a fear of loneliness in your mind?
No, I mean, to be very frank, I never heard about Norway, so I'll tell you the story. So I was working with Reliance in Mumbai, and one of my colleagues, he had actually, I didn't see him for 2 years. And when he came back, I said, "Where were you?" He said, "I'm studying in Norway." So in 2011, you can say around September, for the first time, I heard about Norway and I Googled and I said, okay, it is a country, mushroom shaped country, something like that. And he just told me, it's the education in Norway is free. Why don't you apply? So I never had a dream of going outside of India because the kind of background I have, I studied from the Scenic school. So I wanted to be an Air Force pilot, but I couldn't. So there was a lot of patriotism and everything instilled that, okay, and you have to, and again, the kind of attachment to the parents, which I think most of Indians have. So it was just an experimental thing. So I fill in the admission form and it just happened. And I just talked to my parents. They said, no, you should not go because being the only son. But then I said, okay, it is an experiment. So I just went there. So I went there out of curiosity. And since technology wise, since we were working in oil and gas and most of these engineering big companies, they were over there. So I wanted to learn something. So my deal with Reliance was that I will come back in 2 years, but that never happened. So loneliness, I never realized that, because we have grown up in cities where you will find people everywhere, even at 4 in the morning. But when I reached there, and for the first time, summers were good because days were long, but at the winters, what I experienced was the depression for the first time, and then I didn't realize that it would happen, but it happened because most of Norwegians, they go back to, for Christmas at your homes. And in India, you have seen a lot of Hollywood movies where you think that, on Christmas, everywhere there would be lights, people would be dancing, but that was not happening in Norway. It was in Norway, this Christmas time is a very, family time. So you go back to wherever you are from and no one is on the street. So that is where, so it was me and one of my friends who is from Ethiopia. So we were just on the roads and everything was closed. Shops were closed. So 24, 25, 26, everything was closed over there. So we couldn't even fetch a beer for us. So that was the fate which we actually went through. But then there was a medical reason to it. It's not basically why you feel depression is because once this vitamin D and omega levels go down, so you have this feeling of anxiety in you. And then somebody told us that, you have to start eating this fish oil tablets, omega-3, and then only you can achieve a good performance. So then when I started with it, then it was good enough. So you can say it's basically both physiological and psychological things that happen. But yes, I didn't have the fear when I was in India, but I actually experienced it when in the first winters. And I think through our videos, that is what we tell to the student, that be prepared when you are coming to Norway, because there is not a lot of information about it. And if it is only the good. That is how the marketing agency works. They always tell you the good part of it, not the bad part of it. So that was my experience.
Yes, sir. Like a lot of students like us also want to travel and go abroad for our studies. So loneliness is a
I guess she's facing some network issues.
that we need to talk about, and your videos also.
So, Krishna, you're facing some network issues. Can you please mute yourself? Okay, so I'll take from here. So I guess she was saying that, that many of us are planning or after our graduation to go outside India and to reside there, to have their career there. So it's actually a very important thing for us to know as well what are the challenges that we all are going to face. And this is something that, like, it is a very individual level thing that all of us will face, and we have to be ready for that. So that is something that is very important for us. So, Manoj, sir, this question is for you. Actually, we wanted to know, like, out of US, Australia, and Canada, why did you select Australia to work on your research area? What were the aspects, or what were the situation? Why was there something education-wise system that intrigued you to do your research there?
Well, very good question. Frankly, I never dreamed of going outside India for PhD. Coming from rural background, Even Delhi, I first time came when I had to get admission in master. So Delhi was a big thing, they were saying in India, Delhi dur hai. So that was like, the thing. But then when I, started working, the Ramjas College where I got master admission, I interact with a lot of, students and so on. So I could see that, I have some potential. And when I got a job at the Institute of Economic Growth, I worked with, some of the distinguished scholars in economics. And then, one of my mentor is Professor Raghav Geha. He's a retired professor from FMS, University of Delhi. And I thought of doing PhD with him, and he asked me to write a proposal. When I went with the proposal, he read it and he gave, of course, his comments. But then he said that, why are you doing here? Why don't you go somewhere else? And I said, look, I want to do with you. So he said, look, it's a very difficult, for me to justify this. So what you do is, one of my friends is in Australia. Why don't you send him, this proposal? And when I sent it to Professor Jha at the ANU, he liked the proposal. But then he said that, it depends on your admission. So when I was working with the Professor Jha on the project, I met, I came here in Australia for 2 months. And then, I interacted with the people, and I knew that, it's doable. And then I applied for PhD, and, so my choice of Australia was like combination of luck, some hard work, you can say. But most importantly, Professor Atukurala was in the admission committee at that point of time. So probably he judged my abilities and skills, So basically I got admission, and I got, admission was fine, but then scholarship for Australia is more difficult than US, because there are not many scholarships for Indians. But fortunately I got, prestigious scholarships, I think actually 3 of them. So I had to choose between, Endeavour Award and the International Postgraduate Research Scholarship. So I think I would say that certainly I was helped by my mentors, my teachers. I had a good reference letters, and then the admission committee at the ANU saw some of the abilities and skills, and that is how I get into Australia. If I would not have got to Australia, probably I would have done PhD from India, because I never thought of US, frankly. So it was sheer luck. And when I came here, in the department, you were asking about the loneliness. In our Ant Cotton Department of Economics, then, was very lively. Even if you go at 1 or 2 o'clock in the night, you will find some of the people working in the department. So, I never felt that. And we also had, another thing helped me is when I came here in 2011, my professor introduced me with there is a sabha called Bihar Jharkhand Sabha here. So there are a lot of people from UP, Bihar, and Jharkhand in that group. And when I went there in the first meeting, in the next meeting, basically it was after 3 months. So I become organizer, and so I created my own network. I had my PhD students, peer group. So a lot of, actually, I never felt like lonely here. But again, the vitamin D deficiency is definitely an issue for Australia as well. So certainly a lot of people helped me, and I'm really, really thankful to all of them who helped me in this journey.
I guess that's the difference between Norway and Australia, because in Australia there are many Indians. You can find many Indians there, but in Norway there are only, as you mentioned, 20,000 Indians that were there. So so that's something that is that might have made the difference between your experiences.
But otherwise, Canberra is a very lonely place, and a lot of people actually feel loneliness here. But it depends on you as well. And in academics, you actually enjoy loneliness. Sometimes you need your own time and your own environment to think and do research, and lot of teaching preparation. So academic job and academic research is not easy, and that is why you see, and not a lot of people even try for PhDs. Forget about going into the academic research, because 24/7 you are into in a different world. That does not make you you might be depressed, but you don't feel lonely. Not because of the loneliness.
That's a tough field, I must say it is. So
I just want to add, sorry, Tanya, I just want to support Manoj sir, because research is something which you want to be lonely. Lonely as in, because all the time, if you want to crack a problem which has not been cracked, you want to find a solution. So too much of interaction, I would say it hampers the progress. So you have to maintain that balance. So for me, Saturday, Sundays, if I was not a family man, I wouldn't go out, definitely go out for a gym or for a walk or for 1 hour, but then come back, solve the problems. So we don't get that luxury of watching series on Netflix, all of that. And that is not, so I don't feel depressed about it. It's definitely because you value your time. And at the end of the day, you are solving a problem which can be benefited towards the society. That is what the primary aim of education is, right? So I think in that sense, it's better to be lonely. That's good.
Yeah, I guess it's more about following your passion, and you know what you have to do. So that's about it. Also, Manoj, so you also have been a visiting lecturer in the University of Papua New Guinea. So how has your experience there been? A difference between Australia and...
Yeah, experience so far is great. So I work in a very novel project, and as I say that it's a part of Australia and Papua New Guinea relationship. So it's a very important project in terms of building capacities in teaching and research at the University of PNG. So as a team leader for the project, my role was to ensure smooth running of the project and implementation of plan while teaching and doing research in Papua New Guinea, on Papua New Guinea. And one of the things that I want, which is relevant for India, is that one of our main innovation was that because University of Papua New Guinea Department of Economics did not had, I think there were only 1 or 2 academics lecturers actually teaching that, and at some point of time only one tutor was running that department. So when I went there, I felt like, I reached to some of the very some of the universities in India in the remote areas are like that. No lecturer, no teacher, no infrastructure, and so on. So I actually able to connect it. So what we did is that we taught economics courses, and then pick 1 to 2 top performing students, provide them a scholarship to complete their master degree at Australian National University here. So we brought them here. They completed their master degree, and once they completed, they went there, and University of Papua New Guinea hired them as a lecturer. So in that way, currently, I'm very happy to say that 4 of my students are lecturer there, and they're my colleague now, and 3 of them are underway. 1 is here, and then 2 of them will be coming next year. So in that way, we build up, the teaching capacity there. Now the implication for India is huge, because a lot of, like, if you ask quality lecturers to go and join somewhere, in the remote areas of Bihar, in some of the, local universities, people will not go. But then if you hire someone at the Delhi University and say that, hey, for 2 or 3 years, you go there and teach, and we will provide you some tax incentives, or we will provide you accommodation, or the family schooling, and so on and so forth, and we will promote you. So some sort of, like, if you provide that kind of incentive to University of Delhi lecturers, lot of them will be willing to go and teach there. And once they go there, they will not only teach, but they also train the local lecturers who are there, who are not, feeling any incentive, anything. So a collaboration between big universities, top universities in India, and small and less funded universities, and in that way you can create a kind of, so if if I get the chance, I will definitely try to replicate this model in India, and which is a very novel model, and it's a very successful story from Papua New Guinea. So when I do this, I always connect. Another thing is that about research, for example, in India, a lot of research you will find on at India level or at the state level most. But then India is not, only India and states. It has a lot of like districts, blocks, and which are some of the districts are bigger than some of the countries in the world. So how to promote research at the local level so that policymakers has more understanding about the local issues and solutions, localized solutions, rather than you have research at in all India level and you impose on some districts in very rural and very forest backward districts in India. So I think if you send researchers, provide them some incentives, it will happen. So it's a collaboration between India. Private sectors can also fund these kind of activities. They are doing it, but then there is a lot more to do. So I think I really enjoy this so far. And when you go there, you meet people, and when people say you changed my life, because if you are not there, no one was there. So it makes a lot of it's a matter of proud as well, and it's a quite fascinating journey so far. The last 6 years I am working in this project.
So indeed, it is a proud feeling to actually know that you have impacted someone's life. And it's actually a great initiative to promote the education culture between the two countries. So I think that we should adopt that policy as well. Okay, so Arvind, sir, recently we saw the pandemic. It destroyed the economy, and there were many job losses, and many businesses got out of the business. So, how do you think the Indian diaspora played a role in this pandemic? How they got affected, and do you feel like in the upcoming years, if there's a pandemic like this, how can we avoid such a problem?
Okay, so first of all, I'll start with if it happens in the future, what's going to happen. So I think the first impact is always the most severe one because nobody expected it. So I think for the future we are ready. I think not ready, but at least more prepared, right? And how it impacted, we all know how it impacted. But in terms of how Indian diaspora have helped, so again taking some of the personal stories. So few of the doctors in Norway, they have actually sent. We pitched in some amount of whatever we could, right? And then we sent ventilators, say about 10 to 12 when Delhi was in crisis. So that is, and I think it's not just Norway, but a lot of people did that throughout the world, and as you have seen, right? So that is, I think, so there are two kind of measures whenever you are into crisis. So there can be a short-term solution to that and a long-term solution to that. And both are important, right? Short-term in that case was there was a dearth of ventilators. So the people provided it at that time, because if that time you say that okay, in the future we will do that, that is not going to happen. You needed respite at that moment. So a short-term solution was that okay, this is what is needed, you supply it. A simple supply chain problem. And then in the long term is something which what we have learned is that first of all, I don't know about the education sector, but yes, like work from home kind of a technique, Zoom is or these Teams or Google Meets, they can be fruitful. It's not necessary to go to the office all of the time. And if you see the positive impact of this, especially in a country like India, would be that if you know that out of 35 most polluted countries, 21 of them are in India. So the impact, if it is not necessary to go to the office every day, and if you can have those meetings via a digital platform, why to unnecessarily travel? Why to take out your car? So one impact of that could be that okay, direct pollution is reduced, especially in cities like Delhi, etc. Right. So I think that is one of the opportunity which we have seen from this crisis, and how an Indian diaspora can help that. I mean, so planning phase, definitely making it more, how we can plan it in a better way, so you can supply that intellectual muscle to your home country. That is something irrespective whether pandemic happens or not. So that is something I would say. So these are some of the thoughts which are coming to my mind, but I think so other members can elaborate on this.
Yes, sir. Manoj, sir, do you have any thoughts of it?
Yeah, I think I completely agree to Dr. Arvind, but I would like to add here that I think one of the, when pandemic happens, and Professor Atul Kurala has written a paper recently on pandemics, and he saw that what happened in 1920s when pandemic hit. So I think things did not, and according to my opinion, things did not move much. I mean, the damage definitely was at different level, because economy was different level, population was different level. But one of the thing that Indian government can learn from this is infrastructure development. You need to develop hospitals, you need to build hospitals, you need to improve more number of doctors per person, you need to improve number of beds, you need to improve medical equipment. It's a huge investment, but then it is doable. You have to bring private sectors, you have to bring how you can work along with the people with the given constraints. I think that's one thing, because it's important to have these things before something happens. There is a saying in Hindi called like, when जब आपको प्यास लगती है तो आप कुआं नहीं खोद सकते, because it takes time to dig that. So you will have to actually prepare before. Another thing is that this kind of pandemic actually disrupt your supply chain. So how to strengthen your supply chain and looking into the alternatives, so that should not be affected from pandemics. But again, I wish that this kind of pandemic will not come. I'm very optimistic about it. And some of the things like ICT technology and these kind of things. So a lot of work India has to do in that front. And it's always hard to tell when another pandemic will hit. Role of diaspora was very, I would say that, I'm very proud that Indian diaspora, not only the NRIs, there are different components, but also people from India, Indian origin from other places, they help India in terms of, those things. Otherwise, also in last year, around $90 billion was the remittance, where people send it to friends and families. And when this pandemic came, people actually send. I even sent more money than usual, during the pandemic, because you have to protect your family, your friends, and so on in their need. So India's remittance to Indian diaspora's remittance to India is huge. It's like 3.1% of GDP. Around 15% of the forex reserve, which is around $640 billion or something, is coming from the remittance. Not only remittance, but there are also NRI deposits, which basically people invest in India through deposits. That's also a huge number. It's like $5, $6, $7 billion. So through investment, long-term investment, people do. But then Indian government also have to provide proper environment. Like I know a lot of people who wants to invest in India, but then they are not investing because the court cases, if something happens, something goes wrong, the whole life they will be going to the courts. So some of the things, some of the protections is required. A lot of people are actually having they bought some land, some apartments, but something happened there, and their money has got stuck. So that discourages Indian diaspora, whether you like it or not. So some of the protections, some of the incentives also NRIs requires. I think in terms of the visa and other things, Indian government has given a lot. So if you make people happy outside, definitely people, there is no reason, I don't see any reason that if pandemic happens again, people will not help. And as Dr. Arvind says that, whatever capacity, different people have different capacities, but then everyone tries to help.
Yes, sir, I agree with you. And there are these small issues that we really need to focus on, especially the legal challenges that you just mentioned. And also Arvind sir's point about work from home and how it is the new normal. And even I feel even going out and having to work, there has to be a balance between the both, because I feel both is needed in an equal proportion. And how do we strike a balance to bring out the maximum efficiency? That is something that we need to realize. Okay, so yeah, over to you, Suresh.
Yes. So Manoj sir, you have also worked in Fiji. So as we have a huge Indian population living there, how was your experience staying there and working in the field of research? Like, it was not far from home, right, for you?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that was probably the best time I ever had outside India. I'm very thankful to Australia. It has given me a lot, but then I really enjoyed when I was in Fiji. Fiji's around 37.5% population is of Indian origin. Their forefathers came there as indented laborers during British time in 1869. They are called Girmitias, by the way. And one of my friend, Praveen Jha in Norway, he has written book in Hindi as well, so you might read it. But then a lot of literature around Girmitias. But in Fiji, like, you will find a mini India away from India, like Indian food, movies. You will see Bollywood movies, first day, first show, like Rush. People talking in Hindi, even though their Fiji Hindi is slightly different from Indian Hindi, because it's a mixture of Bhojpuri, some of the local dialects like Bhojpuri, Awadhi, some of the Tamil word also you will find in that, and different accent. But then they feel about India. It's more like just in 1 year I have many friends and families there who are, like my family. So if I want to go there for a few months, I don't have to book a hotel and to stay there. I can stay with them. So people are very lovely and they feel about India, Indian culture, Indian proud. And that also creates some sort of like ethnic issues between those indigenous Fijians and those from the Indians. But I think they have preserved Indian culture. They have preserved, and if Indian Prime Minister goes, look at them. So sort of like that kind of feeling they have. It has been 6 years since, but before pandemic, I used to go at least once a year. So yeah, it's like people talking about their stories, meeting you, and they really love Indians. The role of Indian High Commission there in Fiji reduced because it's a more part of like they tell you that okay, this is good for India, rather than saying that hey, you do something for us. So it makes a lot of difference, and I really enjoyed in Fiji.
Yes, so surely there's a personal connect when you move to a country and then the whole majority of the Indian population is also living there. So that's really great. Over to you, Tanya.
Tanya,
Tanya, your mic is muted.
Okay, my laptop just got hanged. Sorry about that. Yes, sir. So I just wanted to ask, the amount of young brains, moving out of the country results in a brain drain, as some of some of the people quote, and some of them quote as a brain gain. And you both are a great example how the Indian diaspora has been benefited and how it has been a brain gain exactly. So, like, what's your major view on this, and how can you give your opinion about the same? Oh, Arvind sir, yeah, you can go first.
So I remember when I was in 9th standard, so there was this debate competition which was about brain drain problem in India, and I said that yes, this is a problem. So I was towards this, you shouldn't go outside. But then today I am on the opposite side, right? So see, the problem is what I personally feel is when you currently are in India. So, but since I had a different kind of, you can say, since I was in Sainik school, so I had more attachment to India. But generally, if you are not this patriotic type, or I know a couple of people in India who don't like India, and that is not like the culture of India, but maybe the way, for example, if suppose somebody is not being too political, but somebody supports party A and party B is ruling, they would always, say that, okay, this is not the way it is. They have totally spoiled. So that could be one. Another could be the personal choices. You know that if you come from a village in India, you can't behave in the manner you are supposed to behave, but the way society wants you to behave. So few people have opposition to that. On the other hand, in Western countries, the degree is not the same, right? It might be. So, but I personally have a very great connection to India, right? And what I personally feel is wherever you go, even if I am physically present in Norway, at the end, my goal of the life is that, okay, whatever I have learned and with the people around me, how can I contribute back firstly to the place where I come from, right? It can be, so I will talk primarily of Shimla. So whenever I go to Shimla, it's not like, since I don't compare to countries in that way. Okay, I was in Norway, there is no honking. In Shimla, there is honking. And then you start to complain, oh my God, they will never improve. So I think as a researcher, you don't fall into that category. Because I know a couple of people who come and say, look, Shimla is doing this, they are doing that. They just point out, okay, there's a new cafe, it's improving. But at the same time, see that there is a lot of litter around. So as a researcher, I believe you become a matured person also. You see a problem, rather than just criticizing it. Okay, you can criticize, but you also try to see whether I can contribute towards it or not. So the brain drain was a problem, but now you can see that this is called as a reverse entrepreneurial migration, right? People are coming back to India as well and doing a lot of doing some startups, and at the same time coming up with some solutions which can help India. So I personally think as of now, I fall into that category, that whatever I am learning from Norway, I can try to, inculcate that culture and try to solve that particular problem. So to give an example, I will give you two examples. One is that, in Shimla and in Norway, we have equivalent amount of cold, you can say. In winters, in Shimla also -8, in Oslo also -8. But now the biggest problem is the way houses are constructed in Shimla and the way houses are constructed in Norway, they are totally different. The way right now you'll see in India, what is happening is we are building these houses in a block system, which are totally made up of mortar and the bricks. And that is the Western, that is, you can say, the British influence. But if you go to villages, so right now in my village, my house is still made up of wood and etc., right, which is having a better insulation capacity in compared to you can say the houses in Shimla. So now the problem is that you cannot, inside the house also, you have to wear same amount of clothes which you have to wear outside house. And when I see my parents agonizing because of this, because now they are old, and we see that I think in Australia also the same, in most of the Western countries, you're just wearing t-shirts and all, and outside temperature doesn't affect you that much. But in Shimla, that is not the case. So one of my aims would be that, okay, try to learn from here and build houses like that, for example. Another is, which we have already worked, is the problem of the food waste, right? So in Shimla, they started this segregation of, at houses you segregate between biodegradable and non-biodegradable waste, but at the end, when all of this litter goes into the same bin, then the problem is not solved. So we have started with this under the CM startup scheme. We came up with this one of the companies or startup biogas, which is actually making your biogas plants which you can use on the top of your terrace. So I think, and that I have learned from Norway. So Norway and Denmark and Germany and Sweden, you can say, they produce a lot of biogas. So here we do a lot of waste segregation. So I learned some things from here, and I'm trying to implement here. And I try to keep my research only in these, like water treatment plants, biogas, so that, at the end of say 10 years, I learn a lot of stuff, and then I can solve at least certain problems which Shimla or Himachal to start with they are facing. So I think it's an opportunity that you learn something from here and then you implement it. So that is how I see, and I think most of the people see it that way only.
Okay, so yeah, that actually there was a conventional thought that initially that it is a brain drain and not a brain gain, but now I think as the progressive mindset is coming and people are realizing how much it is important, especially during the pandemic era as well, how much it was needed. So that is something that we really need to realize. Manoj sir, do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with him. This is now we live in a global, village. With globalization, we all are global citizens. So I think India should not stop brain drain, in the name of but rather than it should focus on promoting it, because it has always been the case. If you look into the history for last 60, 70 years, a section of skilled Indians went outside, developed their skills further, and then came back. And some of the revolutions, like Green Revolution, like Dr. M.A. Swaminathan, who was an agro scientist, right? He returned from US. About this, what you call it, the White Revolution, the milk one, the father of White Revolution in India, Verghese Kurian. Or you take, Dr. Sam Petruroja's case, who came and, from US and established that. And he's called, by the way, I'm not sure whether your generation knows about it, but there used to be LOPCOs all over Delhi and other places, right? Where you put some money, once coin, and then you talk, right? So he basically contributed into revolutionizing this kind of telecommunications. So these people went there and come back. And if you look into people working in top position in India at the moment in finance ministry as an advisor or Niti Aayog or something, a lot of people have returned from overseas. So certainly there is a spillover effect and everyone gains. Personally, I can tell you that I'm contributing more by being here than when I was in India, or if I'm lecturer in India. So it's if you get away of the if I'm here, like a lot of people say, oh, you are not contributing into India, you are serving others, and so on and so forth. But there are different ways of serving, right? We are contributing into the knowledge session here, right? A lot of NRIs I know, they have startups in India. They are doing a lot of online support, online startups, like Dr. Arvind also mentioned. So basically, wherever you are, as long as you are, your one part of activities are dedicated to India, I think you are more patriotic than some of the people living in India and not doing anything or disturbing the whole equilibrium of the society. So so I think this is my thought, just in addition to what Dr. Arvind said.
Yes, sir, I completely agree. And wherever you are, you have to contribute at your most, and that is really important. Over to you, Sudesh, now.
Yes. So, sir, as we are students and in future, we would also love to go into the field of research. So when both of you were working on your research paper, how tough the actual process is to actually finally complete the research? So can you both share your experience of how much struggle and everything is involved to finally publish your research paper at the end of the day? Let's start with you first, Arvind, sir.
Okay. So see, I think one, if you say what is the recipe in to be successful in research, is one is definitely you should be ready to put in the number of X number of hours, right? That is one thing. That urge of doing research has to come from you. The second is the right kind of mentoring, right? Which is like, if it is your supervisor, he tells you, okay, this is where you have to go, this is what you are doing wrong, this is what is right, then it accelerates your pace. And the third is definitely and the third is the network. Besides your supervisor, what network do you have? So I think these three things. So right now, wherever you are, so one thing is like you work on yourself, and the second is try to find a good mentor for you. Try to identify that, okay, this is the research area which I want to do research in, and then Google, okay, this is the guy, write email to him. If he doesn't respond, write to another. So make a list. So preparation has to come from you, mentoring has to come from somebody else. And once you are at certain level, and then you try to build up your network. I think like how in academia, as associate professor or assistant professor or whatever your designation is, you survive is based upon networking only at one particular time, because you have to give time to your own research. So in research, I think one strategy which has worked for me, I would say, is that you try to be an expert of one thing, that is gain the depth in one thing, and at the same time gain the breadth also. I cannot say that I'm a mechanical engineer and I will only work with this field, right? So maybe in the future, me and Manoj sir also, the economic aspect of building a product, maybe we can also write a paper. So it's about, talking to other people, telling them that, okay, this is what I think, what are your views? And then, so that is what I do a lot. I talk to different people and try to build my network. And so that is, I think, how it works. But be good in one particular field where people consult you. And then at the same time, you build your breadth so that you can contribute everywhere with that thing. So I think that would be my advice at this moment.
Yes. Manoj sir, would you like to share yours and adept?
Yeah, I mean, just to add more of it, I think he covers the gist of the research. Just to, so different, area is still different. Like if you're doing, for example, in economics, for example, you need to understand the theory, you need to understand the data, you need to understand the, econometric techniques, you need to understand the policy, you need to understand the national and international politics of it, right? Without understanding that, you will not be able to actually think of something concrete. You can do research, like a lot of people do research, but then that is not that will not be your thing that can be sustainable, and you can't. So but then for me, I think this journey has been quite frustrating. I mean, it's not easy to do research. Like, you have, other people will be going for like, weekend trips, and then you are still thinking about your research. It's to maintain work-life balance is quite difficult. I mean, it is not possible. So you have to be a bit aloof. You have to be like, networking with right set of people rather than gossiping, going to movies. And, so if you're kind of person who enjoys these kind of, activities outside your work, then probably research would be different, right? So coming back to my research, I think my core of the research is that, I love people actually. I love to understand people, their culture, how history of nation plays a role in the economic outcomes. And then I try to implement that, from the micro perspective, but then the aim is always macro. For example, aging. When I thought of aging, a lot of people in India say, oh, India is still young. Why you are working on, economics of aging? And I said, look, I know the Indian family system, right? Indian family system has been traditionally joint family system, isn't it? So my father used all his savings to educate. He invested basically everything that he had in us, right? And in return, he might not expect, but then in return, the society expect that I will look after him. At the same time, I'll also invest into my children. So it means that I'm stressed from both the sides, isn't it? And if I become unemployed, think about the situation. So even if that I'm not aging, right? My father is aging, like So social security has declined from, joint family system to living arrangement has changed because of the population, growing urbanization, and so on and so forth. So when I think about the next 20, 30 years, I know that India will be in mess because, people who will be retired, they will have less pensions, less, financial support. And those who are young, if they are not educated, they are not healthy, they will not be able to earn that much, and tax burden on them will be too much, right? So I started thinking of that, and then, here comes Australia, here comes Japan, where, like, for example, Australia, here, it's an aging society. 16% of Australians are, beyond 65 years and above. But the number of people is just 4.2 million or something. But in India, it's less than 10%. But then if you look into the number, it's like, around 100, 125 million people. So the volume in India is so huge. And that is where I saw that, some sort of like research is required. And when I start working, then it is linked with health, it is linked with the poverty, it is linked with the disability, it is linked. So aging is linked with. So I think for last 6 years, I'm not doing much research on aging. What I'm doing is that I'm learning from other countries, right? But then I'm building that. It takes time to have your, research. You might feel sometimes you might feel you are not, for 1 or 2 years, you did not publish any paper, in top journals, but then you have to build that background. You have to understand not only the data, but also understand people. So this is what my recipe is. It's frustrating. It's, coming back to India, there is a lot of issues that, in India has. So if you talk about the topic, you take any topic, and as Dr. Arvind mentioned, that you go into depth of it, what people have done so far, what you can do, and what are the possibilities, and what are the policy implications, and a lot of innovative ideas you will get once you start reading journal articles. Don't read newspapers, but read newspapers. I'm saying that don't read, every day what politicians are saying and so on and so forth. You will not be able to build your research from that, purely from that. You have to read the journal articles and top journal articles, and then you have to spend certain time. You have to, meet people, network. Some people are good in X, you are good in Y. Let's have X plus Y and create Z, right? So the quality of the paper will be better.
Yes, sir. So a lot of people actually come into research, but at the end of the day, they don't complete it. But both of your tips and experience will help us a lot in the future also. Over to you, Tanya.
Yes, as Sudeshna rightly mentioned, actually we all are, many of us, the audience is also there, they are actually looking forward to go in the field of research. So it's actually very helpful to have a guidance from you and to know your perspective as well. And there were many questions in the audience as well that they wanted to ask, but we are kind of short of time right now. So I'm hopeful that we can actually again get together later and have a discussion about it. So for now, I guess that's it from our end. Thank you so much, sir, Arvind sir and Manoj sir, to take out your time and interacting with us. Over to you, Varsha.
Right, so what an enriching discussion it was, and I'm really sure ki we have learned a lot from this. So thank you so much, Mr. Arvind and Mr. Manoj, for coming here, and thank you so much, Tanya and Sadeshna, for conducting this, and for our audience too. So thank you, sir, for having here. We are really glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. We are very glad as well, and I can also speak on behalf of Arvind. And I can see him smiling, and we got connected as well through you. So it's also an opportunity for us to network. Thanks for providing this platform, and it's always pleasure to my connection with that university time. Always remind me that I have to do something, and I can't. This is just a small contribution, but I hope your other students who are not in the meeting, on the YouTube channel, they are watching somewhere, they will be benefiting as well. We are happy to have your questions. Please feel free to send emails if you have any questions or concern, anything. thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks
you,
a
guys.
lot, Arvind and Manoj, sir.
Okay, ji. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.
Okay, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, sir.
Bye, sir.
So meanwhile, I would like to tell you about a platform which is Auditor Desk. It is an audit training platform offering live training to individuals who aim to build a career or gain detailed understanding in the field of accounting, auditing, ITR filling, tax audit, and government compliances, etc. They offer online training to individuals who aim to build a career or gain detailed understanding in the field of auditing. So, using updated technology, pieces of training conducted for students comprises or of practical tailored to their needs are timely, relevant, and applicable day-to-day activities. It's over to you, Jigyasa.
And I have a news. Are you looking on to enhance your stock market knowledge? Well, then you need to get on board with Read On. It's a community of thousands of students, and you can receive daily updates on topics such as finance, stocks, business, crypto. And Read On will bring to you fresh, crisp, and deeply researched insights from the world of businesses and finance. And it will be in a very fun and simple way. So you can join the community to get your daily dose of business content. Check our YouTube description for the link for the same. And also, everyone, stay tuned for our last speaker session with Mr. Avnish Mundra at 5 p.m. today. Now we conclude our this session. See you all at 5 p.m.